Hi, this is Trish Price.
And this is Jenifer Dick, and we are Everyday Stitches. Welcome to week 1 of the Courtyard Quilt Along 2022. This week we are going to work on cutting the curved pieces to make the petals and the background.
So we'll start with the pattern. On the cover we have one layout. We call this the bordered layout, and all the cutting instructions obviously are on the inside page. If you go to the back, we have 3 different layouts. We have a straight set, a checkerboard, and a scrappy, which uses fat quarters. And if you go to our website under web extras, you can see the yardage requirements for this. Or better yet, you can just take your phone camera and go this way, and it'll go straight to the page. It has inspiration photos. You can see lots of different fabric lines that we've done mock-ups of, video tutorials, and then you come to alternate layouts that'll show the checkerboard for all 3 sizes, what you need for the straight set, all 3 sizes, and for the scrappy layout it tells you how many fat quarters you need, plus there's a little yardage involved. And at the bottom, most importantly, it tells you what pieces you can get out of each fat quarter. And we're working on the fat quarter today.
Yeah, that's the version we're doing, and it seems like that's what a lot of you guys are doing as well. So if you're not doing this version, you'll just follow along in the pattern. Okay, so today we're concentrating on the large petals, well, the only petals, and the large outer arcs and the small inner arcs. So that's what we're concentrating on today.
Okay.
So we'll start with the...
We want to start...
Oh, yeah.
First
Let's
we'll
talk
address
about this.
the scrap. So when
Yeah.
you cut your fat quarter, you'll cut one large piece that's going to be either your petal or your background arc. And you'll have this piece left over. And with this piece, you can get your little inner arcs or your small corner arcs from here. You cut 2 squares, that'll give you a cluster of 4. That'll give you 1 block. You can also get 4 of the wide sashing out of this, which would cover 1 block. You could get the large cornerstones out of this, or you can get all of your small cornerstones out of the leftover. So work with your leftover pieces.
Right, they're very important. Okay, to make the large petals, you need your 2 squares, and the cutting sizes are all in the pattern, no matter what version you're making. And then we also have these nifty little diagrams that help out with the cutting using the everyday curves. So for the large petal, we're starting with the curve piece A template. And you need to fold your square in half on the diagonal. Okay, one thing I like to remember is your fold line. We're working with the drunkard's path fold here, so fold to fold. You always want to put your fold line on the drunkard's path, your folded fabric where that is. That's just how I remember it. Because you would be sad if you cut from the other edge.
For sure, for sure.
Especially if you don't have enough fat quarters. Okay, so we're lining up along the drunkard's path fold line and just to the very edge of the corner there. And make your cut. Okay, so that is cutting the first side. Now we have to cut the other side. For this one, we flip it over like this. And we've got to do something, we've got to mark the seam allowance now. So what we're going to do is take our regular, just acrylic ruler, and you're going to go across 4.5 inches.
4 1/4 inches.
4 1/4 inches. Trish is right. And you want to make sure to get your 4 1/4 mark right on that tippy point, right there. And then you're going to mark with whatever marking thing you have. I'm just using a pencil. You can use a white pencil, whatever you have. And you're just going to mark right on that corner because that's your seam allowance that we're accounting for. Okay, now to cut this off.
You're right.
Yeah. It's a big puzzle, isn't it? We're going to use the drunkard's path fold again and line it up on the folded side.
Yeah, expect to get turned around a few times.
Yeah, it takes a minute to orient yourself. And then where that dot was, that dot is right here on this seam allowance line. You can see that it's just right 1/4 inch inside. and you just put that dot right there.
And it almost always ends up at that intersection.
Yeah, it lines
or
up with
should
that.
end up at that intersection.
Yeah, close. So, and then now make your cut. And there you go. There is your large petal. And you keep going. You get 2 per fat quarter, and you just keep going until you have as many as you need.
Alrighty.
All right, now for the large arcs. These are a little bit different. There's a few steps in here to do this one. All right. First of all, we're going to cut it in half. I need this long ruler for this. Cut it in half on the diagonal. I want to make sure to, a helpful tip is sometimes if your print gets in the way of your mat, you can turn it over and cut from the back.
Turn out. Yeah, just because it's so hard to see.
Because
shadows.
it's so hard to see.
That's a good point.
And I do that a lot.
Good tip, Jennifer.
I know a lot of tips because I've done everything wrong at least once. Okay, so you just cut that down the middle in half. All right, now with your 2 halves, you're going to, I jumped the gun. Before we do that, I'll just do them one at a time. I'd be more comfortable doing that.
Okay.
All right, we're going to trim those corners off, those points. So line up your regular ruler.
Way off. There we go.
I am way off. How did that happen?
know.
There we go. Okay, and you're just gonna line it up 9.5 inches and cut off those points. And that's very important because that becomes the seam allowance later. So now to finish making the curve, you just keep looking in the pattern, all these cool little diagrams. You fold it in half, again on the diagonal with your 2 blunt ends together. And you take your everyday curve background piece B, and again with the drunkard's path fold on the fold, you're going to line that up.
And you're cutting away your short side, not your long side.
Right, that's very
That's the
important.
other.
And you're just lining up to that
I can see it better
point.
than you
Okay,
can,
yeah,
I
you're
think.
at the right angle. Makes me wonder how I ever cut these by myself. And then you just make your cut. And now you can see why that's important, because that's going to be your seam allowance, or allow for your seam allowance. Okay, so that is your outer arc.
Now these we cut from the scrap. I mean, from what was left over from our
From the-
big squares.
Yeah. And what's fun about this is the easiest cutting. You make sure they're stacked pretty good, or if you're not confident stacking, just do them one at a time. Either is fine. And you're just going to use your background piece again, and you're just lining up corner to corner. And you don't have to pay attention to the measurements. And another helpful hint with this curve, it's the same curve no matter where you put it. So you don't have, you can cut it down like that, you can cut it up there, and it doesn't matter. I know that throws some people off because they're like, wait, I want something to line up. It's like, you don't have to. Yeah. Okay. And then this is the piece we keep. It looks like scrap, but that's the piece you keep. And then you flip it over and you do the exact same thing on the other side. So you're just lining up points to the edge of the ruler. And you make your cut. And this is the scrap. Okay, so now that you have these cut, we have to go back and do some more trimming. With a regular ruler again, we're going to line this up. Let's use the right side at 5 inches. And you're just going to...
You're not at 5 on that side. You're 5 here and 5.5 there.
I see.
And now you're 6, and now you're 5.
Again, how would I do this without Trish?
Well, you clearly have.
I cut a lot of them wrong, is what happens. All right, there we go. So that's trimmed up, and that's your 4 centers.
So that's all the curves.
That's all the curves. Just go through at whatever size you're making, do all your outer arcs, inner arcs, and petals. And we'll see you next week.